Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, Eric Latif and Nduoko, CT Muga, has taken some time off to re-energize his batteries. Today's proverb is a Maasai proverb. You know where you come from, but you do not know where you're going to. You know where you come from, but you do not know where you are going to. That is the proverb of the day. It's a Maasai one. You want to hear it in Kimasai?
You can say it in Kimasai.
Yeah? No, do you want to hear it in Kimasai?
I would love to. I would love to hear it in Kimasai from you.
Okay, talk to me later. I will tell it to you in Kimasai. I'm looking for it actually.
Should be interesting.
Eyolo ake enilo kake meyolo enekijokini. Bas.
It's a bit freaky that you can pronounce Masai very
Yes. Kake kabisa. A very good morning to everybody who's joining us on KTN Home. You'll be with us until the top of the hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Live streaming on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website www.spicefm.co.ke. And we are on SpiceFM around the country: Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, and Malindi. Yep. So the conversation that we want to have in this hour is on women in leadership, women empowerment into the next general election. So what we know is that in the constitution we gave ourselves, we also set for ourselves some ideals and said we are going to make sure that we have equity in our positions of leadership across the country, especially when it comes to gender. We'll make sure that the marginalized, the minority groups, and this is the youth, the persons living with disabilities, will also have a say at the table, the decision-making table. And one of the things that has been done is by putting it in law that, one, we must make sure that our elected leadership positions have at least a balance in gender, and that is no gender shall occupy more than 2/3. So there shall be the 2/3, 1/3 split at least. It can go to 50-50. No problem at all, right? We know that the National Assembly has not met that. We know the county assemblies have met that because there was the County Assemblies Act, which allows, the Constitution itself, which comes up with a way in which the members can be nominated to fill the slots. Our cabinet, there has been all this conversation about, is it 30% or is it 29.3%? Or we know about, other positions of leadership where we always constantly keep looking at whether there is proper representation of gender. The Judicial Service Commission now looks okay. The leadership of the judiciary looks
Okay.
good, okay? But when it comes to the next general election, when people have got to go and elect leaders, are people prepared to elect more women leaders in the next general election? Let's go backwards. Are political parties prepared to nominate more women for positions of leadership in the next election? Are more women prepared to present themselves and offer themselves up for leadership positions in the next election? If we begin from whether we already have demand, and then whether we have people who are willing to put themselves out there and say, I want to be elected, then let's have the conversation. Are people then willing to have that conversation with them? To help us have this conversation is one of the only 3 women who were elected as governors in the last election. There were 3. One of them, unfortunately, passed away, Joyce Laboso. So we only have 2 women now as governors. And this is the Kitui governor, Charity Ngilu, and Kirinyaga governor, Anne WAIGURU. And she joins us now on the line. Good morning, Governor.
Morning.
A very good morning and welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation. We call this the hot seat, where if you're in the studio, now with yours and all the good flags and all, we just call that the hot seat as well.
Yeah, I think it's too hot.
We shall still warm it up for you and make sure that you have some good time. Let's start by congratulating you. You are among the women who were named as 100 most influential African women 2021 recently, and you've been placed in the same category as Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia. We have Sahle-Work Zewde, who's the president of Ethiopia. We have Ngozi Chimamanda. We have CJ Martha Koome and others, Charity Ngilu as well. So being placed in that pedestal and being recognized among the women who are influential in the continent is a good thing. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that very much. A great honor.
Indeed it is, and not only just for you, but also for the country.
Yes, and for the women of this country as well.
And then last week you held some meetings, and we saw that your communications team released a statement, and you also went into your social media and you released the same. You are saying the collective power of women is like the sound of thunder, the message of which you cannot ignore. Women account for 50% of the population and more than 60% of those who vote. They must be represented at all levels, including all negotiation tables. And you say that you are holding a meeting with women leaders to have conversations with the women grassroots leaders and opinion shapers from across Nakuru County. So tell us about this. What was this all about?
I think, Eric, what happens is that we need to start having these conversations. A lot of times we have been in boardrooms in the cities, the big towns, discussing the importance of women being recognized and being called to sit on the negotiating table, and also to just be given the rightful space. But it's not happening. And the reason I think it's not happening is that we are really engaging at our level amongst those of us who are elected, but we're not carrying along the electorate, the women who actually make the decisions about who gets elected at the end of the day. And if you do not bring them on board, we will be talking in boardrooms saying that, yes, we need the 2/3. We have already tried to go through the legislative process. It hasn't worked. I think it's over 6 times that we've attempted to pass the bill on the 2-gender rule. And because you're trying to pass it in a parliament which is largely male, and maybe we haven't been very effective in communicating what gender balance means or the importance of it, we haven't succeeded. So we have to start looking for alternative ways to ensure that we get this at least 1/3 gender represented in all spheres of leadership. And I thought that it would be good to take the initiative. As a woman leader, I'm required to play my role to ensure that I bring others along, not just to sit there. That when my term comes to an end, that I will say I have contributed to increasing the space for women in this country. So I just thought, let me start talking to women at the grassroots. Let me hear what they think. How do they view us as women leaders? What do they think when they are presented by candidates that are willing to stand? Are they willing themselves to come out and say, I'm going to try despite the difficulties? So starting that engagement is what I thought is important, and it's not to wait for a party, not to wait for my fellow women leaders to go with me, just to start the conversation and let's see where it takes us. Yeah.
Governor, even as you do this, and even as others who are involved in this movement, because I'm not talking about it as something new, but in the move or in the push to have more women involved, whether it is taking up positions of leadership or whether it is appreciating those women who actually do come out and then putting the support behind them, even as this goes on, is there a fundamental understanding or appreciation of the particular women who come out? Because the narrative that has been spun sometimes has been that even women don't support women. Women don't believe. There's a large percentage of women in this country who don't believe women should come out for elective positions. How do you deal with that as an issue, even as this support is being drummed up?
That is, let me say, I would say fairly but not completely accurate. I think it depends on where we come from. I don't think it's the problem with the women not believing in women. I was elected by majority of the voters in Kirinyaga being women. I'm a woman leader. But if you look even at Kirinyaga, you will notice that there is an issue. I think it's how women are presented. They elected me as a woman governor, but they did not elect a single MP other than the woman, which is completely, that seat is preserved for women.
Yep.
All MPs were male, and all the county assembly was male. But the fact that they elected me says that they believe that a woman can lead, because the senior most position was given to a woman. And I think it's a little bit more about culturalization and the society. In Kirinyaga, I was lucky to have had another woman leader, having been there for 20 years. Martha Karua was there for 20 years as a woman MP. And so they were already socialized that you can have women who are leaders. So it made it, I think, a little bit easier for Kirinyagans to think that, yes, a governor candidate. And also she was a governor candidate. So the two top candidates were women. In fact, even as we go to 2022, I think it's the only county that 3 top contenders in Kirinyaga will be women. So you're guaranteed in Kirinyaga the governor will be a woman, right? So I think it's a little bit more, not just about women not wanting to elect women, but a little bit more about socialization and exposure and education and what it is that we tell our people. Now, where you have dominant male representatives, you will find that people will tend to elect male because they have never seen another woman emerge. But then, because in Kirinyaga we had a woman for a very long time, it was a little bit easier. And that woman also happened to have been in the gubernatorial competition. So they said, actually, you can move up, you can become a governor. A woman can lead. And I think that's a message that we want to change right now, especially where we don't have women in such senior positions. We are only 2 women out of 47. I mean, 45 are male. And that, whether we like it or not, has an impact in how people view even just a seat called governor. We've never had a woman president. We've had women presidential candidates. And apart from my sister governor, Charity Nginu, who did pretty well in those days, I think the rest haven't performed as much. I think if you look at Mother's votes when she stood in 2013, she had less than 100,000 votes in the entire country. That tells you that we still have a lot to do to educate our people, to educate our communities, to move away from especially the cultural, because I have been thrown that angle severally, that in our culture we cannot have women leaders. We even have some communities in Mount Kenya who say that they cannot even recognize, they will not even consider even a governor for a woman. And that conversation needs to happen fairly fast. And we need to bank it so that we can create this level playing field. Otherwise, we will just be in this conversation where we say we don't have 2/3 gender rule. It's not even 2/3. We are way below the mark. We're not anywhere near the 2/3. So,
where do political parties, in your opinion, often been the proponent for political parties nominating women. So from that point, whether you like it or not, you've already mainstreamed women in the conversation from the get-go. I think of times back when girls were not even educated, and it took certain fathers in the community to insist that their children, that their female children went to school. Thereafter, we saw the benefits of it, and others started to say, oh wow, this is what could happen if my own daughter went to school. And then we had more and more sending their daughters to school. Political parties in this case would be the proverbial father. If you nominated women from the get-go, and then you make sure that they're in that position, you are then able to present them at that point, and then people can actually see what can happen as a result. What's your opinion on the role that political parties play then to mainstreaming women in political positions or leadership positions?
I think political parties will be the way to go, actually, because right now we don't have the legislative process in place. There's no law that really would compel anyone to ensure that women are elected. So the way to go between now and 2022 will be political parties. And progressive political parties will have to take a deliberate measure to ensure that they nominate women for seats that they can win in their strongholds. You see, when we say that we want women, I've had this conversation with various party leaders. I think you saw us going around some time back. And the question they ask you is, where are the women? Where are they? We say it's because there is no space. Women don't have the latitude to be running around in meetings the whole day, looking for party leaders, so to speak. If you're in the rural areas, if you come from, let me say, a community in Homer Bay, you won't have the time to come to Nairobi to look for a party leader, to meet you, to tell them, I need a nomination. If only you gave me a nomination, I'm sure I would win. So we have to be very aggressive as parties to go look for women, provide space for them, in the sense that one of the hindrances for women entry into politics is resources, is money. And political parties can step in and bridge that gap so that you do not require these women to put this money up front, and also support their political campaign, as a party. If the party supported women candidates, it would be easier. Myself and Joyce were supported by our party once we were nominated. And that's how we managed to get in. If the party was not aggressive in ensuring that we are supported, it wouldn't have been possible for us to be here. So I think it's very important that political parties look for women who are strong, who can win, and then give them a nomination in areas where they are strong. Not to say, for example, that if my party, Jubilee, is required to have less than 30% of the nominations to women, we present a list in IBC where we have women in the list, but we nominate them in the areas where we are not strong, let's say in Luo Nyanza. Of course they will win, But if in Central Province they say that 50% of the slots that we're giving, we will give to women candidates, they will win. At least you will have 30% of those winning, and we then increase the chances of women getting into parliament and other positions of leadership, whether it's the county assembly or gubernatorial.
Why isn't the party then thinking this way? You're among the top women leaders in Jubilee Party, your party. Is this the direction that Jubilee is taking for 2022, or is this just a suggestion by Governor Anne WAIGURU, but the party leadership is still thinking the way it was thinking in 2017?
I will be very honest and tell you this is a very difficult conversation, even just amongst peers, because when you say that you want women nominated, you're actually saying that somebody who's one of probably the person you're speaking to right now in the party is occupying that seat and is male.
Yep.
So you're telling them you need to give up your seat for a woman. I mean, it's not an easy conversation. And the thing that will ask you is why is it that you women always want feminism? Why can't you come out and fight out with us? But as I've said, women are very constrained. You can't have strong candidates, but they have certain constraints that do not provide for a level playing field. And Jubilee Party, I would hope that they will make an attempt to do that. But I know it's very difficult because then they say that they are likely to lose support. If you choose a woman to run on a certain seat that is currently occupied by a male, and that male happens to be a strong candidate, and he defects from your party and goes to the opposition, or the competing party, you're likely to lose that seat. And you see what parties want, they want to win seats. So it's a very delicate balance of ensuring that you are looking for strong women candidates, and I believe they are there. And then deliberately saying, let's negotiate with the male candidates who are in this. Amongst you, if we just boosted this lady, we are sure that they would win this seat, support her, and let's see how we can work together in government. That's usually what happens in political parties. You negotiate so that even if someone loses a nomination, they don't defect and go with half your vote to your opponent. So I hope that this is a conversation that the Jubilee Party is going to be taking up. We have been having informal conversations on the same. We have had consultations. We have spoken once or twice to the party leader, especially during the time when we were doing the BPI issue. And now that it didn't work, we have to go back and look at what is the alternative way to ensure that we increase this number. And let me say something else. But if we do not increase this number, it's going to be very costly for government because you will be required to nominate them. And when you nominate them, then it's an extra cost to the exchequer. So it's in our interest to ensure that we elect these women.
Well, it's in the interest of the country. I'm not sure it's really in the interest of the politicians. They don't really care. It's not their money. Once you see people being nominated, as long as I got my seat, I'm fine. In the Situation Room this morning is Eric Latif and Ndu Oko. Joining us on the line is Governor Anne WAIGURU, the governor of Kirinyaga County, who's been honored by the country with the Order of the what's it called? The Order of the Grand Warrior, right? And also the Order of which one is this? Elder of the Golden Hearts. Both of them. Governor, you were once touted as one of the most powerful cabinet ministers in the last government. You had a docket that had devolution, that had women, that had gender, or rather had youth and all. Now, when you had that position in national leadership, what initiatives did you put in place in your ministry to make sure that we can start mainstreaming the conversation about gender? Because this was a requirement of the Constitution to start mainstreaming gender conversations. And you were the first minister under the new Constitution to start implementing this. What did you do?
Eric, if you remember at the time, we were still new with regard to the implementation of devolution. And one of the things that we had was the women position. And with the women rep position, they had been elected in parliament, but they did not have any support structure to enable them to support women development in the classroom. The normal members of parliament had PDFs. So one of the things that I pushed for, and this was also one of those very tough battles, was for the NGAF funds, the funds that are used by the women reps to advance the issues of gender. Not only did we do that, we structured the fund, but we also set up for them offices and provided for them infrastructural support, like ensuring that they had 2 vehicles to do groundwork that are run by the technical people on the ground. So that was my first initiative in terms of ensuring every part of this country sees a woman leader, and that woman is supported in ensuring that they're participating in activities that encourage women participation in leadership, but also moving us away from cultures that were retrogressive, such as FGM, and then moving us to supporting communities to educate their women and treat them as equals. And that, I think, has helped us to be where we are today. That was one of the things that I did. I supported Women Enterprise Fund as well. And I was the initiator of the Act for Fund. It was implemented by the Treasury, but the idea of it came from my office, and it was actually, we decided to put at least 30% of government resources in terms of tenders to women and youth. And we thought that if we did that, we will empower more women to be able to have resources, because that has been the biggest constraint of women participation in not just in political leadership, but also in their societies and in their communities. And that, I think, has gone pretty well. It hasn't worked as well as we have wanted, but it has done pretty well in terms of ensuring we have a larger number of women participating in the economy. And now you see them in the Chamber of Commerce and other institutions that bring together women in business. And it all started with the airport. So those are some of the initiatives that we put together in addition to also ensuring that we are generally conversing and helping women stand out and participate in political affairs.
How about in entrenching the policy of and the whole culture of encouraging more women to participate in leadership from cabinet level? I mean, when you were in cabinet, you were not 30%. But also at that time, the cabinet, the national government had a responsibility to try and bring together the National Assembly or push through the conversation in the National Assembly for that law on attaining the 2/3 gender rule. What efforts did you make in that?
For that one, first of all, when I was in cabinet, we were 30% out of the 31. I think we're just below 30%, we're 6 women. And also, we happen to have gotten the most powerful docket. I think one of the things that His Excellency the President did then is to recognize that women are equal leaders. And the ones given the small ministries, they were actually given the strong ministries that shows that his confidence in women leadership. In terms of the legislation, we were very active in participation of the laws that were being developed in Bunge. We even tried to support the lobby. I will tell you, it wasn't once or twice. Every time that bill came, the ministry took the initiative to put women together to come up with a strategy. How do we get men to come and support and vote for this legislation? We would even support them in terms of the information that you need when you're lobbying. How do we go about the conversation? And unfortunately, we just never made the numbers, the two-thirds. We come close, but we never got there. So it's still a journey. I think, as I would say, it's very difficult to go and push a bill on gender where the people who are passing that bill are predominantly male and who actually think that this bill may put them at a disadvantage in their next election. So that has been the tricky part of it, and that's why we were hoping that BBI will just enable us to change certain clauses of the Constitution to make it mandatory, and then parties would have to deal with it. But yeah, we did what we could in terms of education. We lobbied both locally in Parliament with the President. He was supportive. We just could not get the numbers. I will tell you, Eric, one of those times we were so sure it would pass because we had all the women leaders. Every person knew who they needed to talk to who was critical in Bunge. They promised they would support, and then the next day they just didn't show up.
Right. So quorum continued to be an issue. You've raised something I think is interesting, Governor WAIGURU, is that, okay, you said if hoping that BBI would have been able to come in and make it mandatory. Making it mandatory seems to have been a process that even other countries would have, said, look, entrenched in law, that you would then have seen things like, affirmative action then play out, right? So whether or not BBI would have been the way to bring it, I think is a totally different conversation. But making it mandatory now, because other things have been tried, as you've just testified to, you've tried, you've lobbied, you've had the conversation in closed quarters, open quarters. So then making it mandatory then seems one way in which to bring it in, and then attitudes can change thereafter. What are other ways in which this mandatory way can come about? Because clearly, many things have been tried and they've not worked. There's been agreements and then there's been no quorum. There's been quorum and then there's been no, there have been so many things that seem to have scuttled the process along the way. And we seem to just be oscillating in the same area, in the same place. Even though some would argue that strides have been made, we're not where we were 50 years ago, for example. But would making it mandatory actually bring about the change that we are looking for?
I think so. I don't think we have any other choice. It's just like the way, for example, the government says it is mandatory that you take your children to school, and it's mandatory that you vaccinate your children. Because if you don't, there are those people who will say, in my culture, we do not believe in this vaccination, or in my culture, girls don't go to school.
Right.
So eventually, because it's been mandatory, people get accustomed to it, and then it's mainstream. This issue will have to be through political parties being made to require that at least 30% of the nominated candidates they present to IBC will be women. That's one step. Again, as I said, they may be required to do that, and then they choose women in positions where they cannot win. So the second level will have to be a conversation within the political parties themselves. That those women will engage their political parties and say, I'm a member, I would like to be nominated to run for this seat. I need your support, but I also want to be nominated in an area where our party is strong. That way we will be guaranteed at least a minimum of a third in Parliament and possibly in the gubernatorial seat.
So last week when you were holding a meeting with the grassroots women leaders in Nakuru, you said among the things that you wanted to do was to understand what they think and also understand how they view the current women leaders. What answers were you getting?
They're very confined. They say, first of all, they believe that women can lead. Then you ask them, okay, so who amongst you would you recommend for even just, let's say, MCAC? And they said, we know some people who would be running, and then I would ask, would you vote for them?
Mm-hmm.
They said, yeah, this one is a bit strong, but this one, the guy is much stronger. You see already, because of the biases of these seats are mostly occupied by men. Like in Nakuru County, out of 60, I think 65 MCAs, only 5 are women.
Mm-hmm.
Only 5. So you can imagine trying to tell them, with your vote on this other woman candidate. You're coming from very far. So yes, they believe that women can lead. They believe women can lead like me. You know, they even tell me, why don't you go for the top seat?
Yep.
You know? But they do not actually think that there's now someone else at their level at MCA or at MP that they can push, because they haven't seen that aggressiveness of the women. So what I was encouraging them is that you are grassroots leaders.
Yeah.
You are women in your own right. Why don't you stand? You're influential. You're the one who campaigns for us.
Mm-hmm.
You see, like, if you want to campaign up country, I have women who are very strong on the ground. They're the ones I rely on to be on my side to get me votes. So you ask them, why can't you stand for that seat? Because you're strong in your area. Why are you just saying, Mimi ni Mama Soko? Yet you're the one carrying the vote. That MP will not get that seat without you.
Yeah.
Why can't you consider? So I'm saying, think about it. Let's see, and if you can't, why don't you pick another woman? Before you choose a man, why don't you decide, at least let's give 30% or 40% of the candidates to be women, because we're the ones who determine the votes. We are not just majority in terms of population, but on the voting day in Kenya, over 60% of the people who actually get out to vote are women.
Are you holding the same conversations in Kirinyaga?
Pardon?
Sorry, are you holding the same conversations in Kirinyaga County?
Yes. If you notice, there was a day I was eating pilaunjeri with the women. That is the conversation we're having amongst us. Those are the women mobilizers of Kirinyaga and are saying, okay, well and good you're supporting me, but how many other people are we supporting? Are we supporting women MCAs?
Yeah.
Will we have at least 5 or 6 in the country? Then they're asking me where are they? They said, here is one, here is another one, you know. Would you consider? You know? So that's the conversation we're having even in Kirinyaga, and I intend to, as much as possible, see if I can have the conversation not just in Kirinyaga alone, but in the entire central Kenya. We can't just have out of 10 counties one woman governor. We have, for example, 2 governors who are leaving because they've done their second term.
Right.
It would be fantastic if in those 2 counties, without now having to antagonize anyone because they are going, say that why don't we support women candidates? And they have presented themselves in Moranga and in Embu, you know? Cecily Maria has presented herself. Sabina has presented herself. And they're credible candidates.
Absolutely.
Because if I start saying that we want women to be elected as governors, the governors who are in position may feel certain, but this particular 2 seats, they are outgoing.
Yeah.
Even as we say this and we're having these conversations, Governor, is this conversation not competing for attention at the same time with other conversations that seem to cloud it out? Because for me, if it's really going to gain traction, it has to be front and center all the time. But at the same time, we're hearing, even from you, conversations about bringing together the leadership of Central, for example. So we hear this, but then this is just as important, if not more, when we talk about gender mainstreaming. When it's competing with other conversations, such as the central leadership, of Mount Kenya leadership, when this women in leadership conversation is competing with Mount Kenya, for example, how then will it come and remain in the fore?
In the conversation, even on Mount Kenya leadership, for example, we mainstream it, and we're saying it's very important that we look at all aspects. The uniqueness of our situation right now is that we also have in Mount Kenya succession politics that you cannot ignore. And so just talking about women leadership without having to discuss how we are going to converse about the succession politics would be putting ourselves in a place where we're in denial. The critical issue right now is on the number one issue is on the succession issue. And in there, we are weaving the issue of gender and the importance of recognizing that. In fact, in my view, by the way, even in this succession politics, I think that whoever, and I've said it before, whoever considers the gender aspect will actually have a lead. It will be the game changer in 2022. Everything else is too normal. You know, it's the same cases. In politics, we were there in 2013, we were there in 2017. And if you listen to the younger generation, they are saying, give us something different. And there has to be something that creates a sort of a wave. And my belief is that thing that will create that wave is the gender conversation. Whoever is a presidential candidate, whether male or female, who chooses the alternative gender as their running mate, and their strong candidate will have an upper hand.
You know, Governor WAIGURU, this is your first term in politics, and it seems you're actually doing very well. Is this part of your political game plan to mainstream yourself along the gender line, and also hope that if candidates are looking, for example, to partner with somebody who is strong on gender, then Anne WAIGURU is right up there on the list? For example, are you saying that somebody who considers a running mate who is a woman has a strong chance of getting the Mount Kenya vote or the country's vote, and therefore Anne WAIGURU, because she's championing gender, she's right up there?
I think, let me say this, we have always said that if you have no ambition, you have no business being in politics, right? Yep. That's one. Two, I'm a politician. I am at this point in time, one of the senior-most women politicians in this country. If you look at the issue of hierarchy, for example, you have politically, you have the president, the deputy president, and the next level is governors.
Yes.
And amongst governors, we are two women leaders. Now, politics is not just about choosing people by hierarchy, but also looking at who can be popular enough to galvanize for you certain level of support. And I think if I was to consider going that way, I think I'm fairly placed as a woman leader, fairly placed to support a candidate to move, because I have been at the forefront. And not only am I at the forefront, I have proven myself as a woman who can be elected against very many odds, and also to have stood. I don't think that the issue of choosing a woman leader is just choosing a woman leader because they're a woman. I think woman is just one aspect, but they also have to look at other things such as qualifications, issues of performance, whether you have been elected before, have you proven yourself, are you known nationally? If you're going to be supporting a presidential candidate, they don't want to pick somebody who's not known. You'd have to go to a part of this country and start introducing them. I mean, I don't think that's how politics works. I think politics works in different spheres, in different ways. So yes, gender is one aspect. Yes, I have been at the forefront. If I was to be considered, it's something I would consider. But having said that, I think there's a lot more. Look at, for example, what I have done in Kirinyaga. They would want to know, what have you done? What do the people in Kirinyaga think about me right now? I will tell you, if you go to Kirinyaga today and ask the question, has your life been transformed? They will tell you, we never imagined it would be transformed to this level. It's just a fact. If you go to healthcare, and that's why I have had such serious battles with the men who want to run in 2022. And I've said very many times, my political battles are mostly because of my performance. Look at healthcare. I have elevated our hospital level 4 to level 5, modern hospital, 350 bed capacity. We never had an ICU and HDU. We'll be opening the hospital in another month or so. And it's the same class and standard with Nairobi Hospital or Aga Khan. In fact, I don't think there's a hospital like that in our region. If you look at our infrastructure development, the upgrades of our markets, I have built 11 markets in those 3 years, and I'm about to finish this coming month another 4 markets to make them 15 and another 4 beginning of next year to bring them to 20 before the next election. They never had more than 2 markets in the previous regime in 5 years. If you look at the hospitals that we have upgraded, Baricho Hospital, we have done a male ward. We've done a maternity ward in Kenyaga. We've built a maternity in South Gariama, which is a far-flung area in Kenyaga, an X-ray center in Sagana. Those are just some of the things that we have done. In agriculture, we have implemented a program called WAIGURU, and the WAIGURU program has been uplifting homes, increasing the income in these homes by over 1,000 shillings a day. You know, we talk about people living with under $1 a day. But if you look at our poultry program, for example, the families that are benefiting are earning about 1,000 shillings from their poultry project a day. And we have others in avocados, we have others who are doing tomatoes, we have another team that is doing pig, we have youth who are doing beekeeping. And that is to increase income in people's pockets, tangibly, not stories of saying that when I am elected, I will do. I have done it.
Right.
And the only thing that stops us from doing more is the resources that we have at Kirinyaga County. So if you look at a track record like that and now you say, if I was to campaign for being president, for example, I'll say this is what I have done in Kirinyaga. If you elect me, I will spread this program across the entire rural community of this country. This is how we will bring people up from the bottom to the top. But not to say that we will bring people by just throwing money or theories that are not implementable. Right. So I think that would be a consideration when campaigns really start. What have you done? What do you promise to do for us, and can we believe you?
Can we see your track record? So, Governor, recently you said you were taking some time to do some introspecting on the political way forward. What did you mean by that?
Just that. Eric, the problem with us in leadership is that we keep going and never take time to think and take stock of where it is that you're at. For example, if you've had 2 major fails, you need to ask yourself, what have I done wrong? What am I doing wrong? Is there something that I have missed? Am I not listening to what people are saying? That's exactly what I wanted to do, just to sit back and ask myself, I have been at the forefront of BBR. I have stood with a handshake against all odds. I have swum upstream in Mount Kenya. Here we are. We have had 1 loss in the High Court. We've had now a second in the Court of Appeal. By the reading of the law and the judgment, the way they went, it's unlikely that we would go very far, even in the Supreme Court, right? Going by those 2, it's very unlikely that the Supreme Court will overturn 2 decisions of the High Court. You need to sit back and say, where did I go wrong? What is it that I can do? What is it that we wanted to achieve with this UDA, and which are the other avenues we can use to achieve the same? Secondly, what are the people on the ground saying? Because when you ask, what do you think about this thing? This thing was bringing you resources. It was supposed to benefit you. That message doesn't seem to have trickled into their hearts. Is it the way we presented the message? You have to ask yourself as a leader so that you're not going and then eventually hit a dead end. And I think it's very important for every leader. And I'm hoping that everybody, not just those of us who were on the side of the BBI, but even the ones who are not. It's a time that we need to introspect and ask ourselves, is this the way we want to go? Is this the way we want to take our country? How do we take our country forward? And every leader should do that.
Right.
So I'm in the process of doing that, and then when I eventually make my decision on where it is that I think I need to change course or maybe maintain course, I will communicate.
Are you likely to go to UDA?
I don't think it's the right time to have that conversation right now. I can't say I would. I can't say I would not. This is politics. But it's unlikely. But a bit early. Let's see what the ground looks like. I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the ground. Then your bottom line decide which direction you take, and also depending on whether I want to go for which seat.
Right.
Who
decides that? And when I say who, is it WAIGURU who decides that, or is it the hopes of the people who are hoping, for example, that you continue some of this good work that you've talked about? Who decides what direction that will go in? You or the hopes of the people?
The hopes of the people. I will tell you this. I will not be ignorant to try and go against the people. I cannot vote myself in. So I'm listening very keenly to what is it that they want. Do they want me to run for a governorship for a second term? Because in politics, it's not just about performance. You know, you can be a fantastic performer and not be re-elected. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about performance. And anyone who thinks that they have performed and therefore should be re-elected, that is very naive in politics. Sometimes politicians elected on waves of political parties. So you can be swept away despite your good performance with the wave that comes your way, you know? So you did well, they'll tell you, yes, you did well, luckily you're in the wrong camp. Mm-hmm. They can say that. They can decide that. So I need to be very clear that I'm listening to the people. They can also say, why don't you go for deputy? Mm-hmm. You know, they can say that.
Yep.
They say, you know, sometimes these seats are negotiated. You hear someone saying, no, let this person run for this, and let's position ourselves in this way. Mm-hmm. So that is the season we are at, where we are listening to the ground, listening how is it that if I was to go and win a governorship, how would I win this seat? You know, would I win it by myself as an independent? And then if I was an independent, maybe I can swing it. But how will I govern? How do you govern as an independent governor with
the county assembly coming from
to another party? Mm-hmm. They'll impeach you in the second month.
Right.
Realities of our politics.
Yeah.
Governor WAIGURU, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. We'll speak to you again soon. Hopefully, next time you'll be in the studio.
Thank you, and hopefully.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Asante
much.
sana. That's Governor WAIGURU, Kirinyaga Governor, speaking to us in the Situation Room.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.